And yeah, we're back.
Back.
Only Scots are back.
Back streets back. All right.
Sick. Sup, bro?
How are you?
I'm fucking alright. Not me. We were going to talk about the songwriting process of how to write a song.
That's funny, eh?
Is that how it works? Songwriting, writing songs?
I think that's what you do. You just make noises in a room and someone gets sweaty and yells at a microphone.
Yeah. So, for anyone who is watching, who might care or might not, probably not, Scott and I used to be in a band together. We've been musicians for a long time. I've been playing the guitar for now, fucking hell, 15, 16 years.
Is that what you call it? I thought it was a ukulele.
I can play that too. Really badly. So anyway, Scott and I used to be in a band together. Used to be in a metal band. It was called Anamoya. If you want to check that out, it's online still. We've done lots of other musical projects. Scott's done a lot of solo stuff. He is a fantastic drummer. A lot of drumming experience. Drummed in bands in Australia. And he also raps and can do metal screaming and stuff. Talented fella. Sometimes. Same. So what we kind of wanted to talk about is something that we do know a lot about, which is about how to write songs. And everything from the initial beginnings of writing the song to then taking it to a studio, and then the process from the very beginning to the very end. It's a very long process, and we are more versed in the alternative music, kind of rock, metal. Punk, bit of hip-hop. I've done a little bit of electronica. I've dabbled in a lot of genres, but that's kind of most of our experience, especially professional recordings. Most of them that we've done, for myself, I've mainly done metal recordings, pop punk. I've also done singer-songwriter, acoustic. I've done some electronic kind of synth wave thing. I've done kind of a mix of a few different genres. And Scott's done, like I said, he's done like rap rock. He's done a lot of hip hop,
metal, rap, rock, like new metal sort of stuff is sort of, I would say, where I was, and rock.
And rock in general, right?
Yeah.
So we're very well versed in that world. And we kind of wanted to like make a songwriting podcast series, I guess, to sort of delve into how to write a song, how it begins from the begin, how it starts from the beginning, and then how you get to the end to say a mastered piece of music to then put it on channels or to put it on the radio or whatever it may be. But we're just going to focus on the song itself. And today we're just going to talk about songwriting, and then we're probably going to talk more about, like the instruments. So I'll talk one about guitars, Scott will talk about drums. And just sort of delve right into the nitty gritty of.
I think on the last one we could talk about like, on the last recordings of like the instrument side of it in the bands, we could talk about like the vocals, and then we can also do another thing on actual like studio shit.
Yeah, production. Because that's massive.
Engineers, producers, and all
because that. Like the thing about being a musician is you think it's just about writing songs, being like, like it's just the artistic part. It's so much bigger than that. It's a huge process, and one thing that I'd be keen to talk about at some point as well is the marketing part of it, because that's another whole world, and it's another thing that's so crucial to being a musician, especially in today's world. It's so important.
That's the part I stayed the fuck away from, bro. I got the song. I got to the point where I was like, everything is cool, and even in the bands that we've been in or I've been in, and then it gets to the marketing, and I'm like, I'm out. This is not me. I don't want a bar of it. I fucking hated it.
Yeah, it's really full on, but let's start with the very beginning, the initial beginning of writing a song. So the very beginning for me, how I normally do it is all my songs that I've ever written come from the guitar. So it comes from a guitar riff. Very rarely, I think I've ever had a vocal line that's come through, and I've been like, oh, that's my song. Like, that's never really happened. So most of mine, I would say 99% of the time is a guitar. It's a guitar riff.
I'd say I agree too, because for me, much the same. It's someone's either sent me like a stem, and it might be like a verse, and it might have some computer drums, which I'm always like, yeah, delete that shit. I'll write some better drums over it.
Yeah.
But it's generally like there'll be like a loop of guitars or something, or then there's the case of when doing music with you, you had a bunch of songs. I mean, so you had a bunch of, or let's say like you had a 5-minute song here, a 3-minute song here, or 2 minutes of this and that, but it was always like guitar pieces.
Yeah.
And then I'd always be like, send it through, and then send it through with a click.
Yeah.
And I would just, because I drummed for that point in time, I drummed for like 15 years at that point, so, or close to it. So I was like, I could just listen to it at work and hear your guitar, and I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, I know kind of what I want to put here, blah, blah, blah. And then I'd have like we had a rehearsal space where we rehearsed, but there'd be times where I would just go in there myself with drums and just hash out pieces to maybe a minute and a half of what you've sent. I'll be like, hey, bro. And this is just speaking from my point of view, but for music we've done, it would always be like, you've written this and it's 5 minutes long. I think this would happen with Close Call, which was 7 minutes long or some shit.
That was a very long song.
And I was like, bro, we need to cut the whole middle section out. And you were like, I'm going to do this and this. I was like, nah, fuck that. I was like, let's shorten it up. And the thing is, I'd love people to know this, and I've seen it being in other bands as well, but we did it really good. We would film ourselves.
Yeah, we did.
And this was always a very good way to see what you were doing, whether the song was too fast or too slow, or just seeing where the song would get lost, is watching us jam it out. You could actually see the feeling in the room of us hashing out the pieces. So Scott would write guitars, I'd write drums, then we'd meet, put it together, and actually see how it vibed.
Yeah.
Just with us too. And we always, I think you and I always were very open of like, we love to have cool bass and cool lyrics. So we were just like, you did it often. You were like, let's leave room here for bass guitar. Let's leave room here.
I was always big on that.
Same. And I always learned the hard way of being just an over-complicated drummer.
Yeah, but the thing is, before we jammed, I was in a progressive rock band, and that was exactly that. We were all in our own world so much, where I'll never forget this. The producer came in, and he saw us play our songs, and the songs were good. We just weren't playing together.
Yeah.
We're in our own worlds, and he comes in, and he's like, are you guys playing together, or are you just kind of playing on your own? Because there's 5 guys just doing their own thing.
Yeah.
But we're not actually like a unit. So it's just like drumming. How can I fit in these little fills here? Is it unnecessary? Absolutely. It doesn't need to be there. Same with guitar. It's like, why is there a strumming pattern here when there should be like nothing and vocals should be doing its thing? Or the bass, like why is he's doing a bass run in the middle of a vocal line and it doesn't make sense?
Yeah.
Those
definitely.
sorts of things. And like that's kind of where I really got to like cut my teeth of being like, like being in your own world, trying to prove yourself in the band, like this is what I'm doing, listen to what I'm doing. It's like, that's not the point. You're not there to do that.
No,
it's not a solo effort.
Yeah.
You know?
I learned that in a different way, but the same sort of thing is, I think the first couple of bands I was in were with quite experienced musicians. This is a long time ago, and I was lucky enough to be a new drummer, but I was putting in like 3 or 4 hours a day practicing, and then I finally get into a band, and I knew how to get the fundamentals and the solid stuff down.
Yeah.
So those musicians were like, oh, so you're really solid at doing this stuff, and like they could tell I was practicing so much. And I think that's what people don't realize is when you're doing songwriting, you have to have like years of experience to somewhat strip all those years back to get the nice basic fundamentals and get them down solidly. You can do that within a couple of years, but to actually really understand the dynamics and to take the song on a journey, you have to have those years backed up to go, actually, I know what's just going to accent these little things while not overdoing it. And I think for you and me, the way we did it, it was fast, man, because you had so many pieces of songs that you could send me, and I had like cans on all day.
Yeah.
So I was just like one after another. Oh yeah, I know what I'm doing in that song. I know what I'm doing in that song. I know what I'm doing in that song. And then we'd meet up and they'd just go together. And we'd figure stuff out. We'd be like, yeah, no, that middle part, it's actually we're just going off on a totally different tangent.
Yeah, it doesn't link well to the song. It doesn't match.
And it's quite, I think it's quite hard because, yeah, sometimes people are like, oh, but I really like this piece. And I mean, I've done it as well. I'm like,
it's so hard.
I do this fill, and it's like, cool. And it's just
unnecessary.
Yeah, it's totally unnecessary.
That's a big thing I had to learn as well. I mean, like, I've learned to chill out on holding on to parts of songs. Because also, like, for me, and probably for you, like, when you come up with something organically that you wrote, it's like, that's my thing. Like, that's my, I'm putting this might sound cheesy, but my fucking soul, my creative, ability into this, and someone's
the years of work,
and then the years of work, and then someone comes along and's like, "That's shit." Yeah. What do you think your response is gonna be?
Yeah, man, it's the best humbling thing. I still, to my day, is the best thing I ever heard was, "Don't think like a drummer, think like a singer."
Yeah,
and it was Jeff Harris that said that, who did the guitars on my song, and because I played for doing a single I did, and I was the first time I was going to do vocals, and he did guitars, bass, I did drums, and then I was like, I'm going to put vocals on this track.
Yeah.
He sent me some basic stuff, and then we built it from there. And then when I was doing the drums, he was just like, bro, you're doing too much. And I was like, no, I worked on this piece for like 8 weeks, and I'd practiced to a click. I'm going in the studio. The studio's booked. This is how it's going to be. And I had A drums, B drums, C drums already set up. And he just was just like, that's fucking shit. And I was like, what?
It's crushing.
It's like...
It's crushing. It's humbling, but it's crushing.
It's humbling, but when he said, don't think like a drummer,
yeah,
think like a singer, because you're going to be putting lyrics on there. And that changed my whole spectrum.
Yeah.
And that one moment of, oh, fuck, that's right, vocals. It's a whole... and that's the actual main focus.
Yeah.
And
the main focus of this is just the music that's backing, but the vocals is... You listen to amazing bands, but then if the singer sucks, you're not listening. And that happens all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. It happens so often. And it's like, oh, these guitarist, drummer, bassist, keyboard player, whatever it may be, they're all amazing, but your singer's terrible.
Yeah.
Or your singer sound, his voice doesn't match the music. Because also that's the other thing is, like, I've heard some bands, especially like in like the really heavy, kind of deathcore, death metal scene, and I hear these guys whose vocals are... the technical ability is unreal. They can do all the screams, right? The growls to the high pitch to like the squeals, and it's tough to do that stuff. But then the music, like everything, just doesn't really sound right. It just sounds too mechanical, or sounds very forced. And like I'm like, oh, something's missing. It sort of sounds like you guys are like having a... I understand the idea of music to push yourselves. Like, what is the most extreme? And I know within the deathcore, death metal genre, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
But there are moments I'm like, this is a bit unnecessary. It just sounds like you're trying to like show off that you can do all this stuff.
Well, that's where I like sort of more groove. If I'm listening to metal, I like more groove metal because those musicians are so well trained and versed in every area, but they've stripped themselves back to give it a solid, unified sound altogether. And it's still fast, it's still heavy. There's still all these pieces going on, but that it sounds bad. They're holding back.
Yeah.
But they've held back for the right reasons because now the song is a banger in the metal world, whereas you get other musicians like, what you're saying in your first band where it was just like this and this and this and this and this. It wasn't complementing.
Yeah. It's like we have a drum and a guitar solo happening at the same time. It's like, why?
It's like,
why?
And you recorded that stuff, eh?
Yeah. We went hard. To be honest, that band was amazing. I learned so much, and I will never take that back because it was fucking incredible. And I wouldn't be here without that. But I look back and I'm like, oosh, like, yeah.
I was lucky. I never really had.
But it was nice to be pushed to like how technical and weird. Not how weird, but like how far can like you push yourselves instrumentally. And don't get me wrong, there is an audience for it, but. Again, it comes down to what you want to do and what you're trying to achieve. Because if you want to be the most progressive technical band out there, go fucking hard.
Go fucking do it. But you're going to be doing 8 hours of practice on the instruments a day to a click.
But not even just that. Like if that's the music you love and you want to do, that's awesome. But then be careful of your expectations of what people are going to think of it. Because to you and to musicians, it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. But most people are like, I don't know what's going on. Fuck this. that people aren't bothered by.
They have no idea.
I mean, you listen to really popular pop artists. For example, at the moment, I'd probably say Billie Eilish probably is one of the biggest names in music right now. Her song, what was it called? It came out a few years ago now. Bad Guy. There's nothing. What? A few vocal harmonies and a bass drum.
Yeah, but it connects with people, eh?
Exactly.
Yeah,
so it's like, if you think that that's the popular music, or that is what's getting a lot of views, and if you don't give a fuck about that, hey, that's cool, you shouldn't. But at the same time, it's like, because you connect with your music so much, don't expect other people to. You can't expect people to connect with your music the way that you do, because you wrote it. And I think, when I was really young, I used to think like, because in music, you're like displaying your vulnerability a lot of the time, because music can be very vulnerable, and then people will listen to it and be like, oh, I don't really care for that.
I think as well as with the songwriting, with what you and I did, I think it was more to your playing and probably my playing as well, and it wasn't.
We're both very similar,
but it wasn't so much like, oh, you do that because that's what you need to play like, or I do this and what's like. We had a similar thing where we would just write catchy rhythmic pieces.
We're really big on rhythm. Like, we never wrote solos.
No,
not
really.
I've never been a shredder, because like I can play technical and I can do a few flashy things on the guitar, but to be honest, like, guitar solos to me have always been a bit boring, because I mean, they can be awesome, but I'll be honest, like, I listen to a lot of music, like we both do, but for like a guitar solo, out of all the music I listen to, it's so rare for me to find a song I'm like, oh, that's a fucking cool guitar solo. To me, that really doesn't, but that's also just taste. It's also just taste. But but to me, it doesn't happen often. But when it does, I'm like, oh, that is sick.
Also,
but it's rare.
Also, with the
rhythm catches my eye more.
Yeah, it's same with me, rhythm, because it's like a whole groove thing, and also that for you and I, it was like, okay, what's the hook of the song?
Yeah.
You know, that was always really big to me.
I remember we used to argue about a chorus. Wasn't our song Killer?
We're so different on that sense. And
like who's chorus? Like, what's the chorus? And you're like, this is the chorus. And you're like, no, that's not the chorus. This is the chorus to me.
Yeah, it was so weird. And I said to Hayden, like, our engineer,
what's the chorus?
What's the chorus? And he was like, this is the chorus. And I was like, see? And you're like, nah, that's the verse. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, but regardless.
Yeah.
It worked.
It worked.
Despite what you thought was a verse and I thought was a chorus, with Alana's vocals on it, it was a hooky, catchy part of the song. And I was like, damn, it was just two different mindsets. But that's the thing. It sonically worked, because for me, it's always, when I look at a song like now, it's very much, whether it's instrumental or lyrically, it's like, what's the hook for me? And that's the way I lyrically write now as well. Like, if I'm writing lyrics down, and I know, like, I do like new metal rappy sort of style of stuff, but I'll always go to like, what's the hook? And then the rest of it, you can be dynamic and break off and do as long as you come back to that hook, and whether that's instrumental or vocal hooks, it's to me, that's the most important part. If you want your music to really resonate with people, you need to come back to something that they can remember. Yeah. And it gets imprinted on them over and over again. You can go off and do other stuff, but come back to a solid foundation.
What's the saying? Don't bore us, get to the chorus.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what it is. And
people do. That's the thing. Also, like, I think in the rock world, so many people focus, like, guitarists be like, oh, we need that riff, and it's like, true. But if that chorus isn't there, the riff's a little bit irrelevant.
Yeah.
I say, because that chorus has to be banging. But I think the other part, which I went the opposite of this at one point, is I remember when I was recording my stuff with the Nighthawk Experience, which you're a part of, and I was recording like my verses and choruses. And my verses, I was just so lazy. I was so lazy with my verses. I was like,
lyrically?
Both. Lyrically and guitar. And even like sort of with the soundscape, I was just like, nah, we're just building to the chorus, man. Like,
was that because I was asleep on the couch when you're doing good? Remember, you're doing lyrics and I fell asleep on the couch. Anyway, keep going.
That's all right.
There you go. If you say you were boring and then I was snoring in the middle of the session.
Hurry up, bro. Don't bore us, goes to the chorus.
Yeah.
But I just remember, like, producing this guy we've worked with called Zoran, and he was just like, this verse needs a lot of work. And I was like, why? I don't really think it needs much. And it's like, I think we should try a few things, like make it bigger and work on your vocals and add in a lot more to it. And I'm like, well, what else do we need to add into it? And he's like, well, we need to add in some more harmonies. We need to add in, let's say, bigger soundscapes. Like, let's put in some synth pads and maybe a little synth line underneath. Let's try a different bass line. And I was just like, is that necessary? It was 100%, but that was also the beauty of working with a producer or somebody who is outside of your, like
they're not connected.
You're honed in this, but you might not see it in a holistic vision or in a bigger picture sort of way, which I think is why it's so important to have producers, because you need somebody to be there to be like, I think we could develop this more. And there's also understanding, like, I think it's Darren Malaki from System of a Down said this. He's like, there's no such thing as a bad idea.
And what is it? Yeah, and yes, yeah, I totally agree. If it's like the stupidest question is the question that isn't asked.
Yeah.
Yeah, or like that. And it's true, because some songs are lyrically driven, and then some are instrumentally driven. I think that's sort of how they go. For us and how we wrote was definitely guitars and drums. Once we got that down, I think, and we were quick.
It was very quick.
We're not to blow our own trumpet, but we're fucking fast at writing songs if we want.
It was just coming in, because I always, when I would bring something, it's funny when people are like, I've got like a little riff and then we'll work on it. But I'm like, oh, here's my song.
Yeah. Because I would have like 21 songs or some shit. And I was like, fuck, sweet. This is, because as a drummer, you're like, mint. Yeah. I get to play over all of this shit.
Yeah. So it was always like, I'm always like, nah, I need to have like the complete piece. The rough complete piece. I'm like, I want my verse, I want my chorus, or am I having a pre-chorus there? And I want all these bits to be there. So it's like, now that there's a song, essentially, within this, we just need to kind of piece the puzzle. We need to just get everything together, put the drums, the bass, and then have everything work together.
Like I said before, I think we really found it as well, when filming ourselves.
Yeah.
That was the best thing to look back on and be like, because there was a couple of times, and I've got it on the old GoPro, of watching back some of our stuff. And I was like, I even remember when we were like halfway, it was just me and you. Alana wasn't in the band at the time, and we were writing, I can't even remember which song it is, Recoil, and I think that was the song.
Wow, yeah.
But fuck, we played it fast. And then like watching it, and you're like, because you were hyped up, I was hyped up.
Yeah.
I think people probably thought we were crackheads or something. Eh?
So how's this going to translate? Like,
and then we watch it back, and I was like, bro, this is really fast, man. You're like, oh, really? I didn't feel that fast. And watch it back and be like, oh, shit.
Yeah, that's fast.
Like, and if you think about how, there's the other thing to songwriting, I think it's extremely important. Yeah, like as you said, you can be technical or as dynamic as you want, but your expectation of where you want that song to go, or how it's delivered either to a crowd or a platform that it's going to get played on, it can kind of differ. So we would look at our footage and be like, we really want it to like resonate with people playing live as well. That was a big thing. Like we'd always find like a good tempo that was solid, and like, how's that going to hit? How's that going to make people feel at 10 o'clock at night when they're on the piss?
Yeah.
And that was something to look at. Or if it's a sad song, when Alana did Glisten?
Yeah, we wrote Glisten, yeah.
Yeah, and that's like...
That is a pretty like melancholy
so
sad song.
Slow and chill. I think we only did it once or twice live.
We never did it.
But man, it made sense. That song totally makes sense. But we knew, as the band we were, like it's very rarely going to get performed live. But our other songs, we were like, yeah, this is going to hit hard live, because that's how we were writing it. And I don't know if I think people these days, but at that time, I don't know if a lot of people took it into account of how's that going to translate from jamming it into a live performance. Is it too fast or is it too slow? Is it not interesting enough or is it too crazy?
Yeah, we definitely would think about that, but I was like really big on like, do we like it? I mean, that's always the big thing with anything you do musically is like, do you like it?
You have to love it.
And something else I've been thinking about a lot recently, coming down also to songwriting, is, people can see through your rubbish of like displaying something that
isn't really you,
or is half-assed. Yeah. Audience will see it. And if they come watch you, they'll find it.
Yeah.
People aren't stupid like that. They'll just feel it. So writing something really honest and something that comes from a place of like, well, there's a deep meaning or there's something that I'm proud of and I love a lot. You can't, like that's always my critique of a lot of pop music. Now, pop music, as we know, is popular music and is created for the masses, or the fucking H&M clothing shop, and I despise a lot of that. But I get it because it's there to fill, like, it's like a commodity at that point. Pop music
is filler.
It's a commodity, something to put on the elevator, something to like, you go to the toilet and here's some pop song. And that's how I think about a lot of it. Some of it is amazing. The production on pop songs obviously is probably the best place to look for new production techniques and new audio kind of amazing production. But I would say a lot of the time with that stuff, when you're trying to go after trends or you're trying to create something that's a trend and you start thinking about what does the market want, that's not...
if you're totally doing that on...
Yeah, and a lot of people do, and I get it, like, but it's like music is now like, it becomes the commodity, which is always this part of like a battle I think a lot of musicians have internally about music, like the passion for music and the love for the art, and then of course, how do I make this work if it's going to be a career? The answer to that is, it's fucking hard. It's really hard to make
the balance of it.
If you want it, and the balance, I think, internally of being like, my passion for music and love and the amazing experience of creating the music, but then it's like, then you have like to the marketing or to the business, or like, how's this going to work within the real world? And my answer to that is like, it really depends on what you want. Like, what do you want out of it? Because if you want to make money, first of all, don't do music. It's super dumb. I would never do music if you want to make money.
Nah.
But I would say, like, if you really want to, like, because with pop music, obviously, you got to understand that the music about the whole, let's say, looking at a pop artist, the music is only about, I would say, 20%, maybe even 30 max. Marketing to the image, to the persona, to the, obviously for social media,
the age group and all that.
The age group, all of that is actually what it is. And then the music is like that. It's like this much of it.
Yeah. That's why it's weird when you see like new artists, or when you see a new interesting artist that's like, I wonder what they actually do when they're in their own space.
Yeah.
Like, what do they actually play? What do they actually listen to? It's quite...
How do they actually... That's the other thing as well. I think these days if people are more authentic because...
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we look at social media and everyone has their opinions now. Bad it can be and all that. But the good part, I think, of social media is that people can see through bullshit a bit easier.
Oh, bro. That's one thing I'd always stick to my rhythms and all that sort of stuff. Well, obviously drumming, guitar, and all that. But we were well versed to go more technical if we wanted to. We could pretty much do whatever. We could do death metal, whatever. It didn't matter. But we would kind of strip it back to solid, strong metal and rock. But lyrically, I got a huge problem with lyricists not being honest with themselves.
Oh, yeah.
You meet them off stage, totally different person. They go on stage and they sing a love song about how brokenhearted they are and sweet and sensitive they are. That's fine if you actually fucking mean it. But if you're just doing it for like image, I'm like,
image and
that's
like
not...
and like a business marketing reason, or to make yourself like be looked at in a certain way.
I think that's where I may have struggled with me doing vocals, as I was very honest.
Yeah.
I was like, how I am and how aggressive I was getting in a song, and I'm swearing, fuck this and fuck this motherfucker. I was
you're actually like that.
I'm actually that guy.
Yeah, you are that guy.
And on stage and pulling the fingers at people and like, fuck all you motherfuckers, like I didn't give a shit.
Polarizing is strong, but you are like that.
But I was like,
you are like that.
There was a girl in another band, she came up, she's like, how do you run the crowd? And I was like, what the fuck do you mean? I was like, that's who I am. Like, I know how to entertain, yes, but like lyrically, I was like...
But as a person, when I listen to your lyrics, I'm like, that's Scotty.
Yeah.
100%. I'm like, oh, that's nobody else.
Yeah, it's how I am, and that's one thing I always thought to myself if I was ever a vocalist, fuck it, be honest. Still write the catchy hooks and all that stuff. Yeah. But when I'm like dialing out the words, I'm like, I ain't holding back, man. Fuck this shit. This is who I am.
Yeah, like that's the thing. I think a lot of people have a struggle with the vulnerability at times with writing lyrics or writing things that they think people will like.
Yeah,
like
this is
what. But we're very different. But it's like going back to the pop world, or even looking at a lot of, I would even say indie bands, and I've seen this. I'm not going to mention any names, and I see these indie bands play, and I'll watch them, and I'm like, this is really naff, because if you're truly an indie band, an alternative band, like kind of more alternative rock or hipstery, like a lot of the time when I would watch bands do this, and I'm like, this is very like artificial. I don't believe you. Maybe you are popular. Maybe you do have followers. Maybe you do have people who like what you do. And hey, maybe I'm not a fan. But when I watch it, I'm like, I don't believe you.
Yeah,
I just don't believe you.
Yep.
Like, and the thing is like I've been to a lot of different types of musical shows. I mean, I grew up with classical music, and then I've ended up doing metal and punk and fucking all sorts of stuff. So I get to see when someone actually means it. Even someone on a violin. I've seen violin players who couldn't care less, and I've seen ones who do care.
Yeah.
I can hear and see the difference.
You know what? I think that's where metal, even though I don't listen to heaps of metal these days, because I've listened to so much of it for so long, I've played so much of it for so long as well, that like metal to really grab me these days has to be quite different. But that's just me personally. But I think metal or heavy metal or death metal, if you go to a death metal gig, I'm like, those guys live and breathe this shit.
It's so legit.
They're missing teeth, balding with fucking still bits of long hair, and they fucking shred the shit out of their instruments. Yeah. And they live it and breathe it. It's so honest and pure and real, and that's what I like about that. But with, like you say, indie, or you see like pop rock, or just rock in general, or even,
and hip hop,
especially, it's like, man, you ain't that fucking dude at all. Like you're completely bullshit.
Yeah,
it's not.
And that's kind of one of the biggest attractions with very intense metal as well. Is like you can't obviously, if you're going to do that, you're going to be an honest person. Hide it. You can't hide it.
Nah.
You know, that's sort of where it is. That's the honesty. And that's always what's attracted me to it. Like, I don't, like, going to the metal thing, I don't really listen to much metal at the moment. Especially extreme metal. I've never really been a big fan, but I will happily go watch a deathcore death metal band. Because I know it is so fun, and they mean it, and it's fucking impressive.
It's impressive, eh? That's the thing. You go back to your days of like, oh, damn it, we used to play at that speed, and it's like
it's quick.
Oh, fucking hell. And then
it's a lot of work.
Yeah, and it's like, that's right. These guys have literally trained.
Yeah.
Like running a marathon, trained to get to this point, to be able to do this stuff, and it's like, fuck yeah.
I'll never forget when I saw Viada's Murder live, and I was like, I wonder how this is going to go. Because, you know, deathcore, death metal, it can be very hit and miss live. It did not miss. I watched those guys go crazy. And I watched the drummer doing the craziest speeds, the blast beats, nuts, to the guitarist doing the sweep and the shredding, to the tremolo picking, to the whilst smashing, you know, headbanging, and then the vocalist, his name's CJ, doing all the different jumps of the screaming to the growling to whatever. And I'm like, yeah, these guys are the real deal. This is the real deal. There's no hiding here, you know. And I watched it, and it sounded really good, which is also, you know, whoever the live sound engineer at the time, fucking kudos to that, because making deathcore or death metal sound good live is hard.
Well, that's
hard. It's difficult.
That goes back to the songwriting as well.
Yeah,
like,
it does.
When you see a band like that, I mean, we see it all the time. We see metal bands or whatever, they kind of go off on a tangent, and you're just like, I mean, yeah, and you see it in a lot of bands, and it's just like, what the fuck is this part of the song?
Yeah, why is that there?
Why? What? It's like, if you really feel cool about that, I'm like, sweet, but the rest of your song is an absolute banger. You should erase that middle part, and then you'd probably get some serious airplay if that's what you wanted.
Yeah.
But if you really want to keep it in, I'm like, hey, cool, but fucking my eyes, it's destroying the song.
It's also difficult about going back to the songwriting thing, and going now to, let's say you're in a studio or signed to a label, there's an expectation. So because at the moment it's the 20th anniversary of Linkin Park's Meteor album. It's got a bunch of unreleased songs, and, you know, Chester Bennington, fucking goat. But when they recorded Hybrid Theory, the whole time the studio was like, yo, we should, you know, you got to stop rapping. to Mike Shinoda.
Yeah, they tried to get rid of him or
Tried to get rid of the rapping, tried to get rid of, I think, some of the electronic stuff. Like, you guys should just be like a rock band, and Chester's the star. And they actually said that. They were like, they pulled Chester Bennington aside and was like,
Yep.
this is all about you.
Yep.
And then he was like, what the fuck? This isn't all about me. But then it's like, coming, I guess, not a counter argument, but another view is like, well, if you really believe in what you're doing and like holding on to the music that you're doing, obviously this is more changing the entire band. I mean, you think about like, especially the first 2 albums from Linkin Park, it is like hip hop and metal, like
it's
married.
new metal.
It's married.
It's new metal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's like married in a way. It's like you can't get rid of the rap.
No,
you can't. It's not going to be the same at all. It's completely different.
As for songwriting, if they'd got rid of Mike Shinoda, the band would have gone to shit because
that guy's a genius.
That guy is the songwriter of Linkin Park.
You know, those guys deserve all the kudos and the credit that they got.
Yeah. Like someone
they deserve it all.
Mike's doing keys, backing guitars, vocals. He's even writing the singing pieces for Chester.
He harmonizes too.
I know, and that's the part. It's like, man, I thought that when they said, "Oh, get rid of it." It's like, you're gonna get rid of like the head songwriter. Like this isn't gonna go well. Or they talked about it or whatever, but
this is before they released the album, which ended up being probably one of the best-selling.
So that's Meteora.
No, Hybrid Theory.
Hybrid,
right in the beginning. So you also got a band that's been demoing and playing shows and doing all this for a while in their first album, and then at the time you get these record labels who are apparently the people who know what they're talking about, right?
Yeah, because they don't write songs though.
Exactly, but if you're a young band in your, I don't know, early 20s or something, coming in. And then a big record label of these producers are like, you should change that. You should remove that. That's not good, you know? And a lot of people will listen.
Yeah.
And that makes me think, is like, what happened about all those bands that didn't make it? Who had something similar, you know? So I think about that as well. So
in some ways you're saying, like, when you're writing your songs, you're sticking to your guns.
Yeah, stick to your guns. And I guess, like, be open to all feedback. But at the end of the day, you make the decision.
Yeah. And
at the end of it, you make the decision. And obviously, back then, I think, because Hybrid Theory came out in 2000, it's also weird that you want to get rid of the rap part because nu metal was so fucking huge. So that's also odd. But I think they're looking at it from like a marketing point of view. It's about the business, right? And this is obviously the biggest struggle, is that musicians are terrible businessmen.
Yeah, weird. like I said to me, the marketing, I was like, later, ball.
Like, I mean, that's what I do, and I really enjoy it. And it's like marrying the two, because you have to if you want to like make your music a career, whether you like it or not, you're gonna have to figure out how this business marketing part works. Otherwise, you're gonna get fucked, because that happens. You look at all these massive bands, like even Metallica. I think it was a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken, they only got the rights to their music back.
Yeah, they did. They just got the rights back. Yep.
I think a few years ago. Yep. But they didn't have it for years.
Nah. That's so weird.
So you think about a band who grinds, like we're talking about, put in all the work, put in all the songwriting, make these songs together, and it's not theirs.
Yeah, and they've done all the shows, done all the touring, but it's kind of weird. I think going back to as well, even though we say that, going back to the songwriting for you and I, or bands that we've been in, it's always good to cut like demos. Rough demos, because obviously depending on what you want to do it as a band, because there's bands these days with social media platforms, or the internet I should say, that there's bands that are they're just instrumental, and they have their songs and they release them as instrumental music, and that's fucking cool if you're a musician. That stuff would have never got marketed or released or gone anywhere, whereas these days it can, because you start to get the technical side of the musicians, which is rad. So there's no vocals, there's just amazing guitars and drums, which is awesome.
Soundscapes and all that.
Yeah.
You get to hear all the production in the back. That also makes the song amazing.
For us, it was always like doing lyrics as well, and then writing the lyrics. So we'd do, to the songwriting, we'd do guitars would come from you, drums from me, we'd marry the two together, hash them out the best we could. Also figuring out the time frame of how long we want the songs as well, whether they were the pop length of time, which is generally 3 minutes 30, or had been for a long time. These days it seems it's only about a minute. And that's too long.
I wonder what it is now. I think it's 2:30 to 3 minutes. I think it's somewhere within that. I think 3:30 now is too long.
Right. Yeah, no, it is. It's way too long. I think
think it
like
is
2
too long.
minutes. Yeah.
Nah, no, I think 2 minutes is still a bit short. I think it's 2:30.
2:30. Yes, sorry, you're right. Yeah, so it's basically punk structure.
Yeah, it's weird. You're almost going backwards.
Yeah, that's,
sort of.
Punk songs were 2 minutes and 2 minutes 30, and that was
So funny, like looking at like the beginning of punk, like in the 70s, because that's a big reaction to a lot of progressive stuff. So let's say you take a band like the Sex Pistols, and then a band like Yes, fuck me, different worlds. You got a band that is just like Sex Pistols, rough, grimy, 2-minute songs, 3 minutes, whatever. You know, a bit sloppy, just fucking we don't fucking care and all that. And then you got a band like Yes, incredibly progressive, incredibly technical, long fucking 8-10 minute songs, big, soundscapes and big, well, for the time, you gotta remember the time as well in the 70s, like, and you had bands like that and then punk, and I'm like, so interesting. What a different, like, it's so, I find that stuff really fascinating.
I think there was a lot of could have been a lot of drugs involved in the songwriting of these. It's the same with like Pink.
I think the punk was just the booze.
Yeah, that was
but
just...
yeah, obviously all the LSD and fucking...
Oh, the punks, it was political. I when it comes to songwriting, I don't know if anyone talks about... Well, I'm sure they do. They talk about it. For me, I see so much similarity between punk and hip-hop, like true hip-hop, because it's so political. But real punk is fucking the anti-establishment.
Yeah, I mean, hip-hop was...
And hip-hop was like that.
Initially, it's anti-establishment.
That's
a lot of it. I mean, even before gangster rap, I mean, it was all... I think Grandmaster Flash even had some quite political
It is. It's
lyrics
very,
as
very
well.
political,
and some of it was very dancey, obviously, back in like the late 70s, early 80s, when hip-hop was kind of originating.
Yeah. It's extremely political, so that's a whole different front. And then you've got like the songwriting of like someone like Tool. Or, I think Pink Floyd was a lot of drugs, but
I think in the beginning it was. In the beginning it was a lot of drugs. But yeah, Pink Floyd's another interesting one. But you got to understand, like, music reflects culture, right? So Pink Floyd is a big reflection of the 60s. You know, when I listen to Pink Floyd, I'm like, oh, that's kind of like the 60s.
Yeah.
You know, I listen to some bands like, oh, that represents the time, the culture, what's going on within the country.
It's weird with like someone like Tool, because Tool was almost like that structure, but in a modern day,
in a modern sense, very progressive, very.
But it went on big journeys, you know.
Yeah,
the musicianship. I think that's something that all musicians, no matter what sort of musician you are, drums, guitars, there's a part of you that listens to like a Tool. Even if you're in a death metal band, you'll listen to like your favorite Anima album song or whatever, and you'll be like, oh man, that's rad, and it goes for like 7 minutes, and like, fuck, that'd be cool to do a song. But there's really this how they made that work, because I mean, we've had long songs as well, and they're drawn out and they're rad, but it's like how Tool made that into it was almost like pop.
Yeah.
It was so big, and it's like these songs are not radio friendly.
Nah. But I mean,
they made the radio.
But that goes back to like how good is the song? Like how good is your songwriting?
Yeah.
Because that even goes back to say Queen, like watching the
amazing.
But you watch like Bohemian Rhapsody, like that song. There's no chorus. It starts and it finishes, and it's fucking 6 minutes, and it's like there's that in the movie they kind of illustrate the scene of what it was like talking to the record label about this song. And then he's just like, forget this. This is like, what is this madness? And he's like, it's theater. What did he say? It's like, it's theater, or it's like something like that.
They told the record label to get fucked.
Yeah, they did.
It was like, this is going to be our biggest hit.
This is the biggest song we've ever done.
And they're like, get rid of it, or you're not. And they just walked out and went, fucking laters.
We're going to do it.
Fuck, I think it's, for me, songwriting, and a lot of musicians about, it's progression, right? So I always look at things in numbers when it's like how it's going to build and where it's going to build, and sonically I'll get different ideas in my head of like, oh, I want some strings there or some brass section here and all that. I try and fuck, man, with every song it's so, I think for me the most impressive thing when it comes to songs and what inspires me the most about songwriting, which is weirdly enough, is going to a movie, sitting in a cinema and hearing cinematic sounds on a big scale, and I'm just like, wow, it just lifts me. It
Yeah.
makes me want to be a better musician.
That does,
going
yeah.
to the movies, because I'm like,
You hear the 5/1 sound, you realize this is
I'm
amazing.
like, who wrote the score for this film? I'm like, fuck, it's really got me immersed in the film. And I don't know if everyone thinks like that, but I hear parts of cinema and I'm always like, how can I put that
in my music?
In my music.
A version of that in my
Yeah,
music.
yeah. I'm like, I need that piece there and this song here, because it's gonna. I'm sure engineers look at me like, fuck, you're mental.
I think a lot of musicians.
It's
think
being
like
creative, right?
It's like how can you make your song so much bigger? I mean, yeah, I'll never talking about before about the verse that I was recording for one of my songs called "Grown to Be Us." You can check it out. But anyways, a little plug. But in the verses, like they were really naff, to begin with. Like I was kind of sticking on one chord, this little guitar arpeggio, doing like these very like plain vocals. And it was just kind of like a bit, just a bit naff. And then we got in and added a slightly different chord progression, kept it pretty much the same, but then bass does a little bit more, driving it. Then you start putting in the synths, and then you have like the pad, and then even like a little synth line. And of course, there's all these little audio production tricks you can put in there as well. But I was like, wow, that's amazing. And even like having like the drums can be, I think on that song we changed, I think the transfer into different transitions into the different like choruses, and that just made it so much bigger. Or in the second verse of this song, we got this pad and it was massive. It just sounded ridiculous. On its own, it was just like, it almost sounds like a massive choir. And it doesn't really make sense. But in the song, it made sense.
Yeah.
And those are the moments in the studio that I love.
Oh, I love that.
I love that.
I love that
moment.
shit too as well.
Because you hear it on its own, you're like, "Oh, the fuck is that? Like, why would you do that?" And you're like, "Oh, yeah, that's mean."
Yeah. And that's something that I've always loved as well, is like building a song. I've always had a mindset of, okay, so that's the song. It's kind of hard to explain to people, going, okay, we've got a song, it's rock or new metal or whatever. I'm always in my head under the impression, and this is quite cheeky of me, I'll be like, oh yeah, cool track. Wait till we get in the studio and I tell the engineer to erase all this shit. Let's get rid of it. Okay, that sucks. Put a fucking pad there and a synth there and this going on and some shaky sound here. And I'm like, now it's way better.
Yeah.
And it's, I think it can be quite heartbreaking to some people to go, oh, but once again, but I wrote this piece. I'm like, yeah, but this is better. This is, for me, it's
what's going to make the song better?
How can we make the song?
What's going to make the song
big,
amazing?
Just big. And even it got to the point, I think, when we were recording Anamoya, and also when we did your Nighthawk stuff, and even I always said to engineers, it was just like, oh, how do you want your drums, Scott? And I was like, big. Just fucking big kick, big snare, big toms, big cymbals, just fucking big. I was like, I used to have the impression when I was younger, I was like, right, I'm gonna put triggers on my kicks, I'm gonna do fucking so much double bass drumming, it's gonna be tech as fast, and I got all these little splashes and shit.
Cymbals.
And then you'd get an engineer, and they'd just be like, Hayden was like, oh, cool ashtray, bro. Just pulling off my little splash cymbals and shit and just taking off. Yeah, no, we're not recording that shit.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Why not? And he's just like, nah.
Yeah. It's like for me, I never had the experience of, I know other guitarists who bring in their massive pedal boards. Yeah. So you have 20 different effects, and it's just like, we're taking all that away. It's just like, well, what do you mean? So you don't need it. You don't need it.
There's definitely good. I think there's definitely good.
It's a balancing act.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is also time. I think going to the studio, I don't know if it's these days, I think it's always been like this, but there's always a bit of it, to explore, sounds. Sometimes there's not enough time.
Nah.
So this can always be also a problem, because it's I want to explore, more in the studio.
When you write your guitar pieces as well, I do this with drums. I kind of know now, and I have known for years, how good engineers, if you've got a great recording studio, which we've been able to record in and stuff like that, you can capture massive live drums.
Yeah, you can.
So I was never only when I did my single, that was a bit of a challenge because Hayden had to like do a bit of splicing because I couldn't afford York Street, which was where I wanted to track the drums. And he was like, and he goes, let me grab a snare from York Street and I'm going to blend it with what the snares were recording in a small studio. So you get half and half. So you've got the small sound, but we're gonna get the big reverby open room sound. So I was always good with like drums going, okay, it sounds like this when we're writing music. Oh yeah. But I know in my head that a good engineer is going to pick up these pieces in a good room and it's going to sound great. Do you think as well when you write guitars and you're writing to a song like, okay, there's going to be a harmony on that, 2 harmonies on that, and then you're going into the studio and you're like, right, I've got these other pieces that are going to layer this right up as well. And if for a guitarist as well, you've got like the head of your amp, right? You've got your different tones and stuff like that, and that's a whole nother thing we can go into about different guitars. But writing music and writing a basic chord structure and then recording it might not seem like much at the time, but wait till you've demoed it and gone, okay, it's pretty rough, raw, and ready, but it's solid, and then you go into a studio and then the end result is just fucking
so different, eh?
It gets so much bigger.
Yeah. What was your question?
Oh no, that was just more about when you're writing your guitars to a song. Like that's what I mean. You've got a basic core structure of a song.
Yeah.
Right. But you know in your own head, right, that you are going to have a harmony. You're in your head writing other parts.
Is there going to be another piece
like,
to this?
This is what I'm playing with Scott on the drums. But when I'm going to the studio, I'm actually going to have all these little ambient things going on
well. I don't even think about the ambient stuff until I get there.
Oh, right. Okay.
So for me, when I record guitar, I'll have like my core part of the song, and then I figure out that stuff. It just comes. Like you can't. I mean, some people plan it. I can't really plan it.
I always plan that shit with drums.
Guitar. I just kind of, I don't know. I get a bit like whatever works, man. Like I get a bit like hippie with it because I'm like, oh, that's the core part. That's the core vocals. Core bass or whatever is in the song, and then I'm like, well, the icing on the cake can happen later. So to me, it's like the harmony parts or the ambient stuff or the, whatever it may be. Or I haven't even thought of it. And then I'm in the studio and I'm like, oh, why don't we try this out? Or the producer will be like, hey, why don't you try and do like a little, like little arpeggio or do like a little scrapey thing or do like something, or we'll just play a chord like dun and then just let it ring out. I don't really plan for that because for me it's like I want to be in the moment of like, and it'd be like, oh, that'll work, or you get to just experiment. So before I go to the studio, it's like I think I've said this before, I want like the meat of the song. And then, I think of it like almost like a burger. Like I want the nice juicy patty done. Because that's what's important, but that's the core of it, yeah. But now I can add in, the lettuce and the cheese and the fucking sauces on top, and then so that's kind of how I look at it. Sort of like come in with like the main bit, and then sometimes I might have like another significant part that I believe is important, like let's say like there's like a verse guitar riff, and then I have like a little sub part to go with it. I'm like, this is really important to the song.
It's almost like a hook sort of thing.
Exactly, it's really important, but. Like you said, for the ambient bits and the harmony bits, not
just on the spot.
I've
only sort of
done.
That's
part of the magic that I love.
Ah, right. Because there's for me writing music with you. It was always I would write stuff, record it on my phone or a little like dictaphone or something that I had, and I would write it, and then I'd sort of get a feel once I jammed it with you, and then would record that just on your phone or whatever, and you'd get like a rough impression, okay? But I'd always like write other versions of a section. Like if I was a little bit doubting myself, like, okay, I've got this core, like you said, you've got the core piece.
Yeah.
But I'd always have like another piece, like, oh, actually, to the engineer, I've got another piece for that song. Can we try it? Because now we're hearing it in a studio on good monitors. I'm going to play it to the click. How does it sound coming through the speakers? Like maybe it's different for drums. Maybe that's just how it is with drums because it's just, I don't know. You don't really do harmonies.
Nah, because with drums you'll have like, let's say you record an acoustic drum kit, and then it's all kind of about fattening it up, right? So then you get like the samples.
You need it solid.
You need it, yeah. You need the core drums to be solid and all the parts there, but then it's like, I guess the layering and the kind of more like icing part, I call it, where you start swapping out, like maybe swap out some kicks, swap out some snares, and then put in some different, like you said,
digital and stuff.
The digital editing of it, which is like that's different, I guess, because drums is just all rhythm. It's rhythm. There's no, I mean, don't get me wrong. You can argue that there is melody on drums, but not really.
Well, Tool.
Yeah, I'd even say a band like Nirvana.
Yeah, true.
I mean, for example, like a song, what's that? Yeah, you think about that's a hook.
Yeah.
That's almost like a vocal hook, but just on the drums.
Yeah.
And so, like, they almost can be, like, melodic, I suppose. But I think with guitars, you can just get so crazy with it. You can do fucking 30 guitar tracks if you want. I'm pretty sure on Siamese Dream album by Smashing Pumpkins, I think that at the time had, like, the record for, like, most layered guitars or something.
Probably.
It was, like, 15 to 20 or something layered guitars, like, per song.
Yeah.
Something insane. That's just like, oh, the fuck. Yeah. But it's also like, yeah, you can get as crazy as you want with it. You know, with like with bass, you can't really do that. You can't really, even double tracking bass is a bit weird unless you want to like really smash someone in the face with your bass track, which, you know, has its merits. And then I guess synth, you know, is similar, you know, to guitar in the way that you can do something similar. You could go on forever.
Yeah.
You can have like 10 synth tracks in the back and some.
I would always sort of write the best I could with the drums, as catchy as I could, what I'd hear on a crap recording and in my head, and be like, yeah, that's what the drums are going to be, the song. I've also got plan B and plan C for these two sections in my head that usually no one else in the band knows about until the recording of the drums day. But then I was always really open to, like, if an engineer said, hey, we've got the song, what do you reckon about taking these drums out here, Scott, and having like a digital pattern of drums? I love digital shit, so I was just like, yeah, fuck, cool,
why not?
Man.
Try it out.
Yeah, try it out. But definitely getting most of the core of it done, knowing that that's what's going to be, knowing that there wasn't going to be harmonies, but I'd also have maybe one or two other parts kind of written that I'd practice as well. And then the practicing of it, that's the other thing of songwriting that I think you just really have to hash it out. And you have to play it on your own the best you can, and then you have to meet
to
up.
To a click.
Yep, to a click. And then you have to meet up as a band and actually get the room vibe of it to actually make sure it's gelling. Now, I know there's other bands I've been in which was totally just as we jammed, the songs came out, which was good. But in hindsight, looking back now, if I'd actually recorded that stuff visually and seen how I was actually doing it with the band, there would have been parts that were mint, and then there would have been parts that's like, oh, it's gone off on a tangent. But we don't know it because we're in the thick of it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, we can't see that part at all.
No. No, definitely not.
But songwriting, man, I don't know. Hard for some. I've seen other musicians completely fucking struggle with writing the smallest parts, and it's like
it's.
I find songwriting really, really fucking easy if I'm on the drums. I'm like, this is going to be boring.
Yeah.
Because I'd done so many hours and so much time playing the drums and also playing with heaps of different musicians. I'm like, if we're going to write like a solid structure of a song, like intro, chorus, and then verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus, breakdown, end chorus, like it's a pretty kind of pop structure sort of thing.
And the song's written itself essentially. I think if you still find it fun, like that's the other thing as well, is like, you know, like with our own individual musical journeys, I think after doing it for a while, you've done it longer than I have, obviously, but even for myself, the last little bit, I've been really put off by it. I'm very like disheartened by a lot of things, and I think like, I'm excited like this year because I want to try and get back and do some more creative music things, which I'm pumped about. But the other thing as well, like going about the songwriting and that, is like the love and the fun and just the experience of it. If, you know, that's what it should be about at the end of the day. Because, like we're saying, we're going to make a bit more of a series of this, talk about other things, but you can get really lost in it. And I actually got too lost in it. I got very lost within of like my expectations of myself musically, of what I wanted my goals were with, let's say, trying to have a career or trying to make something bigger. And then you're sort of like, wait a minute, the whole reason I'm doing music is because I love it. The whole reason I'm doing this is like, remember that kid, like me in high school, like just jamming and being like, excited to play the guitar and just write some things that I'm proud of. And then to a point where I'm like, marketing schemes to like fucking releasing songs, and then like, how am I going to release content, and then getting too lost in kind of the part that, yes, it's important, and yeah, if you want to make something happen, I guess, but it's like, what about the initial feeling of it still just as good as is it still like really fun and enjoyable and you love it? Is that still there? Because if that's not there, all of this other stuff is irrelevant.
Weirdly enough,
it's all, in my opinion, it's irrelevant.
Yeah, weirdly enough, I think it's more there than ever, and I'll say why. Because right now, if you said, fuck it, I'm writing a death metal album, it's just gonna be death. It is fucking hardcore death. You'll release it, you get on a platform, and people will listen to it. That's the funny thing. Whereas if we were to do that, and people would have fucking hated it. No one would give it the damn time, man.
No.
I always wanted to get somewhere where I could play live and it was a decent place to play. So I had to like pull back a lot of my drumming, whereas like now it's like, well, people are going to fucking hear it whether they like it or not, because I'm going to plug the shit out of it and it's going to spam the hell out of your social media, so you're going to have to listen to something.
Yeah, because it's going to be there, right?
Yeah. There was no like radio controlling what you heard or what you didn't hear, so it was a bit different. Whereas these days, if you were to say, oh, I really love doing this, fuck it, I'm going to do it, I'll be like, yeah, well, people are going to listen to it because you can get it out there now.
Yeah, and that comes back to what we're saying about the honesty part.
Yeah.
Like, the being the honesty, like, and like with a lot of pop musicians, they all come out and say it. They eventually end up resenting what they've put out and what they've done with their music or with the image that they have, because it's like,
it's not who they are.
It's not who they are, and the heart's not in it. And it's so sad.
Yeah.
And it happens, and I got worried about that about myself, because I'm like, I never want to stop not enjoying being creative, especially musically. Man, it sounds horrible. I mean, music should be all about enjoying it and loving it, but it is easy to get lost.
It's easy to
and it's so easy to get disheartened by it. And I think at the end of it, like about our experiences, and for me, it always comes back to like, do I still get excited and happy about doing it? And if I don't, then it's like, well, I think maybe I need to take some time off.
Yeah.
Or like if my heart's not in it, like getting so lost and working on something that you initially loved and then you lose the passion. It's so sad, but it happens.
But I gave what I've given to, like, okay, there's people that have given way more than I ever could to music. But I definitely know what I've sacrificed was just above and beyond what most musicians will ever do. Like, I'm talking like, you're not eating at nights because you have to buy drumsticks.
Yeah.
Like, you're giving up your dinners. You're scrounging through like coins because you've got $20. That's for a set of sticks because you're playing, and that's all you fucking care about is playing in your band and writing new songs. So you're scrounging through, you're finding coins and like pairs of pants, or you ask someone for 50 cents because then I'm going to go buy a shitty loaf of bread. And they're like, why don't you go buy food? I was like, oh no, because I've got to put money into my drumsticks so I can play. And they're just like, fuck, you're obsessed. But
you have to be.
You have to be.
If you want to try and make something of it.
Yeah, I put it this way. I'm blown away by the music I've been allowed to be involved in. And I don't care what anyone else thinks of it, because, I mean, unless you're another other musicians can have their say on whether they like the music I've been a part of or not, and that's cool that they can either love it or hate it, or go, oh, I kind of like it, but it's not really my thing. That's fine. But if the average Joe that doesn't do music goes, oh, your music sucks, I'm like, motherfucker, you couldn't do 1% of any fucking thing, from drumming or lyric writing to what I do. You ain't got a show. Or even being able to have the guts. And here's the thing about songwriting, that I kind of, you want to respect musicians even in bands that aren't that great and all that. Someone's gone and bought an instrument, saved up money, learnt that, written some songs, whether they've gotten a band or they're a solo artist, and then they want to play live. And that whole thing of like, now we're going to perform it.
Yeah.
That's a whole fucking nightmare in its own, because you're like, oh my God, now I'm really exposing myself.
Yeah.
And you know that the crowd is going to be full of musicians. Generally, is musicians just going, this dude sucks on guitar.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're like, fuck it.
Respect,
man. You had the balls to get up there, perform that, knowing that like you're nervous as hell. And it's like, there's definitely a level of respect with musicians when they walk on stage. It's even if it's not your genre,
it's not your thing.
Understand that person has saved their pennies to buy this instrument, to learn this instrument, write some songs, which might be a fucking nightmare for them to actually do that. They might not be a great songwriter or be comfortable songwriting, and then they're going to go perform it live, and even just organizing an event, with other bands to get on the...
That's another whole thing.
I know, it's another whole...
Well, we should talk about that another time, actually, about organising gigs and events, because fuck me, that's another whole...
But the respect side of it, when I see other musicians out, whether it's a young band doing their thing, I'm like, it's not easy. If anyone thinks it's easy just to... Because I've got friends, bro, that oh, bro, I fucking wish I was a singer, I want to be a singer. I'm like, well, go be a singer.
Yeah.
Like, go do it.
What's stopping you?
Nothing is stopping you.
Yeah.
But if you think it's fucking easy, I'm like, wait till you stand in front of a band and you have to audition with a microphone and everyone's looking at you like, you better fucking own this shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, damn.
I mean, that goes with anything, right? It's like looking at like sports, you look at like, rugby. It's like, it's just a bunch of blokes passing around a ball.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, but what about the 6 days of training and the nutrition and like,
that's crazy, man.
It's like, I mean, that's the thing. When you look at, you have to be obsessed if you want to be the best.
Yeah.
Or you want to succeed in such a way, you have to be completely obsessed with your craft, and that's it. Whether it kills you or makes you something.
It must be so annoying that there's brilliant, in a way it's annoying. There's brilliant songs that exist in the world that no one's ever heard.
Yep.
Like actual men and women that can play a guitar or something or piano, and they've written the most beautiful pieces, but they're totally not into live or recording it.
Yeah.
They doubt themselves in those two areas.
That's
and
always
you're
the
like,
saddest
you
thing.
have the fucking most amazing song I've ever fucking heard. And they're like, I don't really think it's good enough to record. And I'm like, what? The world needs to hear this shit.
Yeah.
Like, fuck, get it out there.
It happens a lot with a lot of amazing musicians. I mean, I've met a few who are just incredible at their own production as well.
Yeah.
And they're just like, nah, I don't think anyone gives a shit. I'm like, I'd give a shit.
Yeah, I want to hear that live. Like, fucking...
And it's like, I think, like, there needs to be... It'd be nice if there's more encouragement. I think the most, like... it's funny enough, it's a quote by Noel Gallagher. He said, if you have the ability to put out art, you should.
Yeah.
You just should.
You should, man.
Like, you should. Yeah. And it's like, so what? What? Someone might say that, oh, who do you think you are? Fuck those people. They can't do shit. And I think this is what happens so often. It's like, oh, but people are going to think this and people are going to think that and I can't do this. And don't get me wrong, I'm saying this because I've had those thoughts a lot. We all do. But it's like, you're doing yourself such a disservice. And I really think, I'm not very old, but I think when I get to the age of 60 or something, I'm like, fuck, should have done it.
That's the other side of it, man, and that's why I went into vocals as well from drums, because I was like, if I don't do this, and I have the most.
When am I going to do it? I mean, don't get me wrong. If you're 60 and you want to do vocals, fucking you should.
Yeah,
that sounds awesome, but it's like it's. I think it's different. I think it's different.
If I came out, if I lived to 60s or 70s and I'm like, Scott, I'm recording like a gangster rap album. I'm like, motherfucker, I'm sure you got some stories about the retirement home you're gonna go into.
Yeah.
Not about like.
But dude, have you like checked out Pete and Baz? Those guys.
We know, right?
I mean, like 70. They're in their 70s, just rapping about, well, arguably the crimes they've committed in their lives, which is hilarious. But it's like, I mean, hey, look. you can do it, but I just, and obviously now more than ever, right? Because you can you can release everything online and do all that. But I think you're doing yourself such a disservice if the earlier you do it. I think, and if it doesn't work out, then that's also okay.
Yeah.
I think if you just not doing it is doing you the biggest disservice.
Yeah. If you want to get into music and you want to learn instruments or write songs, like go do it. It's not easy for a long time. It's really fucking hard because you have to learn everything, and it does take.
You never stop learning either.
It just takes up so much of every single day. But you know what? Like, despite all of the bad shit I've had happen with music and stuff, fuck man, being on stage is fucking rad.
Oh, it is the best.
It's fucking awesome, eh?
It's so fun.
When you see a little mosh pit of people like losing their shit over what you've written.
Yeah, as one of the best. You can't.
It erases all the years of hard work. You're like, now.
This is the best thing ever.
Yeah, this is awesome, man.
Yeah, or people sing back your lyrics, or
dude,
people like air drum or like air guitar, what you do. I mean, what better feeling than that? And not to say that you should aim to have that, but it's like once you experience it, it's like it's pretty addicting.
It is a very addictive thing.
Because that's probably the thing, I think, especially with like metal music. Like I've done a lot of different music over my life, but I don't know, you can't beat people in a sweaty mosh pit who are just like, fuck yeah. Like this is I'm all about this. This is the shit.
Just a circle bang going on.
And then like, yeah, we're gonna fucking run in a circle and kill each other. This is like, there's something beautiful about that. There really is like some beauty in it. And I feel like, you know, like in a lot of music that I've played and I've had the privilege of doing over my life, I'm like, it's you can't match it. I don't know. I struggle. Like I've been to rap shows, I've been to jazz, I used to play saxophone, I've been to classical music, and love what you like, and you know, that's all great, but something about going to one of those metal shows or one of those like big rock shows,
because everyone's there for the same reason. That's the thing.
Yeah, and then everyone is. There's nothing like it. You know, I really would urge people to go to like a hardcore show, a metal show, punk show. Leave all your judgments at the door. And go watch it, because I reckon you're gonna get blown away.
Yeah, my like I say, my old man. He doesn't listen to that music, but when he had seen me play it live, he was just like, it's just a fucking wall of sound that just like literally smacked him in the face.
Yeah.
And he was just like, holy shit. Like he had no idea how, you know, practice in a little room in the shed going tick, 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 for ages, to then years later I'm in a band on a relatively decent stage in another country, and it just like is smashing him, and he's just going, that's what all that work ended up being.
Yeah.
And he was just like, fucking hell, like this is insane. And it's actually quite, I think it's humbling. And my best friend's seen it as well. In the last band I was in, I was doing vocals. He was just like, it's so addictive seeing from where you've come from to where you are. He's like, the world needs to hear this shit, man. I'm like, yeah, bro, hey, you pay for all the funding and the marketing and
we'll do it.
We'll do it, bro. But I was like, fuck. And I think they also see the side of it from the songwriting to the building of the track. They're like, oh, did you write this? And I'm like, yes, I wrote those lyrics. But how? And I was like, I'd write something down and go, yeah, I like that. That sucks. Yeah. Try it. Nah, start again. Nah, start again. And when I talk
torture.
Bro, writing lyrics, like the most beautiful weekends, the surf's pumping, and I'm sitting with a fucking pen and pad just going, I'm going to finish this track today.
Yeah.
Even if the words are kind of shit, I have to have something finished, and then I can come back to it, and then I'll dissect it again. And people don't understand that with songwriting as well, how many times a musician will dissect their own song, break it down, try it a different way, break it down, try a different way, break it down, try a different way, and then finally get somewhere and be like, that motherfucking song took me like, I had a chorus that took me like 8 to 10 months to write.
That's crazy.
Just trying and failing and trying and failing, and it was just a chorus. And then I was just like, holy shit, I got there in the end. And the way I wrote the chorus, I was looking at a laundromat. I was just sitting in the car. And
the ideas.
And I was like, oh my God, that works.
Yeah. Ideas come at the way, and then you're like, quick, I need to find something to write it down.
I always carry a dictaphone on me, bro. I've always got a little dictaphone, so I record my ideas down vocally, whether it's like a drum idea or obviously vocals. Yeah, I'll just hash them out and then I've got it. Or on your phone, you can do it that way as well.
Dictaphone.
Yeah, and it's little
Old
stupid
school.
little fucking AA batteries on it. Yeah, man.
Oh, hey, whatever the process is, right?
Oh, it works.
That's what matters.
Yeah,
Oh,
so-
sweet. I reckon we should wrap it there.
Yeah.
And then come back to next time. We'll delve into some instruments.
Delve into some guitars.
Yeah. Chat.
Later, Bo.